he would turn the child over to the instructor. This continued from childhood to perhaps puberty or longer. He was to keep the child from physical or moral harm. So, too, the old French tutor and Latin tutor mean, literally, a protector or guardian. However, the duties of the tutor also involved the matter of discipline, and he might be charged with instructing the child in matters of conduct. The tutor's discipline could be severe, whether they were slaves or were paid tutors. Therefore, Galatians 3:24-25 points out that the law has become our tutor gr. Pi middle dot dar middle dot goes, literally child leader leading to Christ, that we might be declared righteous due to faith. But now that the faith has arrived, we are no longer under a tutor. The law was strict. It textoi acute miritra longo, Tyre 1135 to arrest had an added factor, because he experienced the labor of spiritual parenthood with them. Compega 4:11-19-20. See education. Instruction. 12. The. See apostle. Tychicus Tychi middle dot cus from a root meaning fortune. Success. One of Paul's aides, a beloved brother and faithful minister and fellow slave in the Lord from the district of Asia. Col 4:7 Tychicus was a member of Paul's party returning from Greece through Macedonia into Asia Minor. But whether or not Tychicus went all the way to Jerusalem is not stated. Act 20. 2-4 Tychicus is one of several persons suggested as the brother who, while in Greece, helped Titus to arrange the collection for the brothers in Judea. 2 Co 8:18, 19, 12. 18 From his prison in Rome, Paul sent Tychicus with letters to Ephesus and Colossae, promising that Tychicus would tell them more about his state of affairs and be of comfort to them. Onesimus is mentioned in the letter to the Colossians as accompanying him. F6. 21-22. Col 4:7-9 Following Paul's release from prison, he contemplated sending either Artemas or Tychicus to Crete. 3:12 When the apostle was back in a Roman prison for the second time, he dispatched Tychicus to Ephesus. 2:4-12 Tyrannus Ranus absolute ruler. Sovereign. A name connected with the Ephesian school auditorium in which Paul preached for 2 years after having encountered resistance in the Jewish synagogue. Act 19. 9-10. Tyre. The principal Phoenician seaport. Identified with present-day Sur, situated about 50 km 30 mi of Mount Carmel and 35 km 22 mi SSW of Sidon. Picture, Volume 2, p. 531 Tyre was in ancient cities at 23:1-7, but just when it was founded as a colony by the Sidonians is not known. It is first mentioned after the conquest of the Promised Land in about 1467 BCE, and at that time it was a fortified city. This mention of Tyre was in connection with the boundaries of Asher's tribal territory. From the start, and all through its history, Tyre apparently remained outside Israel's borders as an independent neighbor. Jos 19:24-29. 2:24-7. Friendly relations existed at times between Tyre and Israel, notably during the reigns of David and Solomon. Skilled Tyrian workmen engaged in building David's royal palace with cedar timber sent by Hiram the king of Tyre. 2:5-11. 1ch14. The Tyrians also supplied David with cedar later used in the temple's construction. 1ch22. 1-4. After David's death, King Hiram of Tyre furnished Solomon with materials and assistance for the construction of the temple and other government buildings. 1 Chi 5. 1-10. 7. 1-8. 2ch2. 3-14. Israelite son of a Tyrian worker in copper, who himself was a skilled craftsman, was employed in the construction of the temple. 1 Chi 7. 13, 14. 2ch2. 13, 14. For their assistance the Tyrians were paid with wheat, barley, oil, and wine. 1 Chi 5. 11, 12. 2ch2. 15. In addition, Solomon gave the king of Tyre 20 cities, though the Tyrian monarch was not overly pleased with the gift. 1 Kai 9. 10-13. Tyre in time became one of the great sea powers of the ancient world, and her mariners and commercial fleet of Tarshish ships were famous for their voyages to faraway places. Solomon and the king of Tyre cooperated in a joint shipping venture for the importing of precious things including gold from Ophir. 1 Kai 9. 26-28. 10. 11, 22. 2 Ch 9. 21. In all the dealings the Tyrians had with Israel, there is no indication that, as a people, they were interested in the worship of Jehovah. Their association was particularly a commercial one. Racially they were Canaanites, and religiously they practiced a form of Baal worship, their chief deities being Melkart and Astarte Ashtaroth. When Ethbaal was king of the Sidonians including Tyre, his daughter Jezebel married Ahab, the king of the northern kingdom of Israel. Jezebel was infamous in her determination to blot out the worship of Jehovah. O textoi acute muritra longo, Tyrian 1136 glassware, and purple dyes, and was a trading center for the overland caravans as well as a great import-export depot. Along with this industrial and commercial growth came riches, conceit, and pride. Her merchants and tradesmen boasted of being princes and honorable ones of the earth. Issa 23. 8 Tyre in time also developed an attitude of opposition to Jehovah and conspired with neighboring nations against God's people. PS 83. 2-8 So it was her bold defiance of Jehovah that eventually brought upon the city adverse judgment, downfall, and destruction. In the latter part of the 9th century BCE Jehovah took note of this city's arrogant attitude. He therefore warned her that she would be paid back in kind for robbing his people of the gold, silver, and many other desirable things that she had used to beautify her temples. There was also to be an accounting for Tyre's having sold God's people into slavery. Joe 3. 4-8. Am 1. 9, 10. Later the prophet Isaiah recorded a further pronouncement against Tyre, which indicated that she would be forgotten for 70 years. Issa 23. 1-18 years thereafter the prophet Jeremiah included Tyre among those nations that were singled out to drink the wine of Jehovah's rage. Jer 25. 8-17, 22, 27. 27. 2-7. 47. 2-4 Since the nations mentioned in the prophecy of Jeremiah were to serve the king of Babylon 70 years Jer 25. 8-11, this suggests that both the prophecy of Isaiah and that of Jeremiah related to Nebuchadnezzar's campaign against Tyre. Also through Ezekiel, a contemporary of Jeremiah, Jehovah pointed to calamity for Tyre at the hands of Nebuchadnezzar. Ez 26. 1. 28. 19 Though Tyre had been compared to a pretty ship with multicolored sails and deck coverings and a prow inlaid with ivory, she would sink in the open sea. Ez 27. 3-36 Tyre's king, apparently the line of Tyrian rulers haughtily boasted, I am a god. In the seat of God I have seated myself. But he was to be removed as profane and destroyed by fire. Ez 28. 2-19. Destruction of city. In the course of Nebuchadnezzar's long siege against Tyre, the heads of his soldiers were made bald from the chafing of their helmets, and their shoulders were rubbed bare from carrying materials used in the construction of siege works. Since Nebuchadnezzar received no wages for serving as his instrument in executing judgment upon Tyre, Jehovah promised to compensate him with the wealth of Egypt. Ez 29. 17-20 According to the Jewish historian Josephus, the siege lasted 13 years against Apion, I, 156, and it cost the Babylonians a great deal. Secular history does not record exactly how thorough or effective Nebuchadnezzar's efforts were. But the loss in lives and property to the Tyrians must have been great. Ez 26. 7-12. When the Israelites returned from Babylonian exile, however, the Tyrians were able to assist in supplying cedar timbers from Lebanon for a second temple, and they resumed their trade with the rebuilt city of Jerusalem. Ez 3. 7. Ne 13. 16. Tyre's conflict with Nebuchadnezzar, though great, was not to be the complete end for Tyre. A later prophetic pronouncement indicated that, though Tyre would build a rampart and pile up silver and gold, Jehovah himself would destroy her completely. Zech 9. 3, 4. Nearly 200 years after Zechariah's prophecy was given, it was fulfilled. In 332 BCE, Alexander the Great marched his army across Asia Minor and, in his sweep southward, paused long enough to give his attention to Tyre. When the city refused to open its gates, Alexander in his rage had his army scrape up the ruins of the mainland city and throw it into the sea, thus building a causeway out to the island city, all of this in fulfillment of prophecy. As 26. 4, 12. Diagram, Vol 2, p. 531. With his naval forces holding the Tyrian ships bottled up in their harbour, Alexander set about constructing the highest siege towers ever used in ancient Otextoi Acute Muritra Longo, 1137 Ukal Ukal. One to whom Agur spoke the words found in Proverbs chapter 30. Ukal may have been a son or disciple of Agur, but nothing definite is known about him. PR 30. 1. Uel, one of the sons of Bani who sent away their foreign wives and sons in response to Ezra's counsel. As 10. 10, 11, 34, 44. Ulai. A watercourse flowing through or near Shushan Susa in Elam. Along the Ulai, Daniel received the vision of the ram and the hagoat. It cannot be determined whether the prophet actually went there from Babylon or was transported to that location in a visionary way. Diet 1-3, 6, 16. Conjectures about the Ulai vary considerably, and identification is difficult because rivers in the vicinity seem to have changed course somewhat through the centuries. One view is that the Ulai is the Kakha River. According to another, it was an artificial canal to the En or any of Shushan connecting the Kakha with another river. Ulam. 1. Father of Bedan. Of the tribe of Manasseh. 1 Ch 7. 14, 16, 17. 2. A distant descendant of Saul, of the tribe of Benjamin, whose sons were outstanding archers. Olam's descendants, sons and grandsons, numbered some 150 in the time of the chronicler. 1 Ch 8. 33, 39, 40. Ulcer. An open bodily sore other than a direct wound, though the inflammatory type usually results from a minor injury, such as a skin abrasion. Ulcers are either external or internal, developing on the skin or on mucous surfaces. They often discharge pus and cause progressive disintegration and death of tissue in the affected area. Inflammatory ulcers, with their hot, aching sensation, often develop on the lower part of a person's leg. In the Hebrew scriptures, the word sometimes translated ulcer is mar-middle.zor, which can apply to an ulcer, a sore, or a boil. Certain scholars believe that it refers to a wound of the kind that might require the pressing out of matter within it. The Greek word onkos, denoting an ulcer, is used in the Christian Greek scriptures. It appears in the Greek Septuagint at Exodus 9. 9 and Job 2. 7 for the Hebrew word sheken, which signifies a boil. See boil. Figurative use. Prophetically, Ephraim Israel was depicted as being sick and Judah as having an ulcer, conditions resulting from their wrongdoing and consequent loss of God's favor. But, instead of trusting in Jehovah for protection from their foes, they futilely sought aid from the king of Assyria, who was unable to heal them of their ulcerous condition. Ho 5. 13 later, Zion, her people having been taken into Babylonian exile, was represented as being afflicted with an ulcer. J 30. 12-15, 17. Compare Lu 16. 20, 21. Re 16. 2, 10, 11. Allah. And Asherah whose 3 sons were tribal family heads and valiant warriors. 1 Ch 7. 39, 40. Umma. A city of undetermined location on the boundary of Asher's territory. Jos 19. 29-31. Some scholars think that resulted from a textual alteration of Akko, the latter name appearing here in some manuscripts of the Greek Septuagint and in the list at JG 1. 31, but this is not certain. Uncle. The Hebrew term dod, at times rendered uncle or father's brother Latin. 4. 20, 20, 25, 49, new 36, 11, once or 10, 14-16, 14, 50, as 2, 7, 15, J32, 7-9, 12, M6, 10, is much broader in its application than the English word uncle. It not only applies to a kinsman, usually the father's brother, but can also denote in the singular or plural love PR7. 18. Expressions of endearment or of love. 1, 2, 4. As 16. 8. 23. 17, and a dear one or loved one. 1. 14, 16. Is 5. 1. The context or other related scriptures, however, often establish the family relationship designated by the Hebrew word dod. For example, dod is used to describe the relationship of King Jehoiachin to King Zedekiah. Since Zedekiah was the brother of Jehoiachin's father Jehoiakim, the word dod in this case obviously designates otex toi acute muritra longo. Unclean animals. 1138. Mother's side of the family is designated in Hebrew by the expression mother's brother. GE 29. 10. The son of Paul's sister revealed to Paul and then to the Roman commander of Jerusalem the plot that had been hatched against his uncle's life. Act 23. 16-22. Unclean animals. See animals. Uncleanness. See clean, cleanness. Understanding. The original language words rendered understanding can refer to comprehension of a rather simple kind or can describe a full and profound realization of the inner nature, underlying reasons, and significance of complex matters. Insight, discernment, and perception are all closely connected to understanding. The Hebrew verb bin and the noun by middle dot na are most frequently related to understanding. At times bin and by middle dot na may more particularly emphasize the specific aspects of discerning. 1 set 3. 8. 2 so 12. 19. PS 19. 12. Da 9. 2. Giving thoughtful consideration to 32. 7. PR 14. 15. 23. 1. J 2. 10. Da 11. 37 or attention job 31. 1. 32. 12. 37. 14. PS 37. 10 to a matter, and may be so rendered. Professor R. C. Dane, writing in the Interpreter's Dictionary of the Bible edited by G. Buttrick, 1962, Volume 4, p. 733, says, the root bin means primarily to discern with the senses, to perceive distinctions, then to give close attention to, and finally, particularly in the derived stems, to gain comprehension or give it to others. Hebrew scholar Gesenius gives the basic senses to separate, to distinguish. Hence to discern, to mark, to understand, all of which depend on the power of separating, distinguishing, discriminating. A Hebrew and English lexicon of the Old Testament, translated by E. Robinson, 1836, p. 140. Another noun, to view middle dot na, comes from the same root as by middle dot na and may be appropriately rendered discernment. PR 10. 23. 11. 12 or understanding. X 31. 3. To 32. 28, according to the context. The basic meaning of these terms reveals the understanding person to be one able to see into a matter and discern its composition by separating the individual factors or features that compose or act together to form the whole, then to perceive the relationship between them and thus comprehend, or grasp, the significance or meaning of the matter. This may be illustrated with a language. If a person is to understand what is spoken in a certain tongue, he must be able to distinguish the individual words composing the sentences, know their meaning, and see how they relate to one another. De 28. 49. However, even though a person may basically comprehend what is said to him, understanding can also go beyond such simple comprehension. It means that he gets the real significance and sense of the message, then is able to evaluate it, benefit by it, and know what action it calls for. When Ezra the priest read the law before the people in Jerusalem, all intelligence from Heb been enough to listen were gathered. Even though these his mature minds able to understand all the words, the Levites were explaining the law to the people, instructing the people in the law, or giving understanding form of bin. Reading aloud from the book, from the law of the true God, it being expounded, and there being a putting of meaning into it. And they continued giving understanding in the reading. Any 8. 2, 3, 7, 8. In the Greek scriptures, understanding, as signifying perception, getting the sense of a matter, is represented especially by the verb me literally, put together, and the related noun sis. Other terms are pi station my, meaning, basically, know well, and no sco, meaning know. Source of understanding. Jehovah God is both the source of understanding and the supreme example of its use. The splendid coordination and functioning of the universe, in which each creation serves a particular and harmonious purpose, with no clashes or problems resulting from an lack of text to acute miritra longo. Understanding 1139 Creator and humbly recognize his own lack of understanding. Job 42. 1-6. As regards man, Jehovah can exercise insight into the thoughts and doings of all mankind. 1 Ch 28. 9. PS 139. 1-6, and as he chooses, he gives thoughtful consideration Heb bin or attention to individuals and classes. PR 21. 12. PS 5. 1, 2 He knows his own invincible purpose and what he will do in the future. His righteous standards are fixed, unchangeable. Hence, there is no wisdom, nor any discernment, nor any counsel in opposition to Jehovah. PR 21. 30. Compare Issa 29. 13, 14. J 23. 20. 30. 24. He needs to consult no one to understand a matter, such as how to help his servants effectively or how to relieve them from distress and oppression. Issa 40. 10-15, 27-31. Knowledge of Jehovah God and discernment of his will combined with faith and trust therefore form the foundation of all true understanding on the part of his intelligent creatures. Knowledge of the Most Holy One is what understanding is, and this includes understanding righteousness and judgment and uprightness, the entire course of what is good. PR 9. 10. 2. 6-9. 16. 20 No matter of real importance can be fully understood unless all the factors are viewed from Jehovah's standpoint and seen in relation to his standards, qualities, and eternal purpose. Those turning from the source. The person who turns to transgression begins to discount God as a factor to be considered when making decisions and plans. Job 34. 27 Such a person allows his heart to blind him to the wrongness of his ways and he loses insight. PS 36. 1-4 Even if claiming to worship God, he puts men's precepts above God's. He prefers them. Issa 29. 13, 14 He rationalizes and excuses his loose conduct as mere sport. PR 10. 23 And becomes perverted, brutish, stupid in his reasoning, to the extreme of assuming that the invisible God does not see or discern his wrongdoing, as though God's powers of perception had failed. PS 94. 4-10. Issa 29. 15, 16.